So the playoff picture is maybe starting to take a little bit of shape, and we've experienced yet another week of the 2014 NFL season. So let's take a look back at the week that was with week number 14 and some of the top stories for me coming out of week 14. I've got to start off with the Houston Texans and the news that number one overall pick Jadeveon Clowney's season is over, and now the reports are that he's getting ready to have microfracture surgery. That's big news when the guy that was supposed to be the once a decade, once a generation talent, the guy that was the number one overall pick, can barely stay on the field and he's going to have yet another knee surgery. That's a big deal. Another thing that was a big deal to me that I didn't think got talked about nearly enough was the fact that Peyton Manning's streak of 51 consecutive games of throwing a touchdown pass was snapped against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. It was one of the more pedestrian, mediocre performances I've seen Peyton Manning have in a long time, not including, of course, Super Bowl 48. I mean, he was not very good. There should be a little bit of concern, just a little bit of concern in Denver about that. I think they have bigger issues than just that. But again, that's over 3 seasons of football where this man every single week managed to throw at least one touchdown pass. That consistency speaks to the greatness of Peyton Manning in the regular season. There's no question about it. And I think it's a big story that should have been an even bigger story in my mind. Colin Kaepernick, after the 49ers lost to the Raiders, kind of acting like a whiny, spoiled, petulant brat. You know, the media can sit there and ask you stupid questions and be trying to rub you the wrong way. But frankly, Colin, you deserve it because you suck. And that's the truth of the matter. Then you've got the Saints, and you've got Rob Ryan and Sean Payton getting into it on the sidelines. Just all types of crazy stuff going on in week number 14. Now let me take a look at some of the winners and losers from the week that was. I'm going to start off with the winners. I've got two teams coming out of the same division in the AFC North, the division that may very well be the best in pro football. The Steelers being able to handle business the way they did Sunday and win in a blowout fashion going away against the division-leading Cincinnati Bengals was a big deal. That was a huge, critically important game for the Steelers that basically put them in the position right now with 3 weeks to go. If they win out, they'll win the division, and they'll guarantee themselves a spot in the playoffs and a home playoff game. That was a monster win. And the same thing for the Baltimore Ravens, too, being able to come back as strong as they did in the second half and be able to beat the Miami Dolphins. Two teams battling out for a position in the wild card race. That was a huge win for the Baltimore Ravens, coming off of that very heart-wrenching last-second loss against the Chargers from the week before. You also got to look at the Seattle Seahawks, and you see a team that is starting to maybe piece it together. They get a quality victory on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that was good stuff. That's the type of Seahawks team that we were maybe expecting to see, frankly, more in 2014, and they're starting to show up at just the right time. But of course, with the winners, there are the losers. And I guess you could throw the Oakland Raiders into the winners category. They found a way to win their second game of the season. There's a chance that the Raiders, when all said and done, after the next 3 weeks, won't even be the team with the worst record in the National Football League. But then on the flip side of that, kind of maybe makes them losers too, just in the sense that they are a bad team. They are still a terrible team. Yes, they're 2-11, skip and whoop-de-woo, but they're still a boo-boo doo-doo team. And their winning these meaningless games late in the year is costing themselves perhaps a chance at the number one overall pick. So on the one hand, they win, and on the other hand, they lose. But there are much more significant losers from week number 14. You got to go to the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that many picked to go to the Super Bowl and perhaps even win Super Bowl 49. And now you're talking about a 49ers team that has an almost impossible path to the playoffs at 7-6. I mean, they lost, for crying out loud, to the 1-11 Oakland Raiders. That just should not happen. Their defense was okay, but their offense has no pop. Their offense has no explosiveness. Their game plan, their play calling is atrocious, and the play of Colin Kaepernick is even more atrocious. This is a team that is quickly falling apart at the seams, an organization that is losing direction on its ship that frankly probably needs big changes after the 2014 season. I mean, to go from 3 straight NFC Championship game appearances to being a team that probably isn't going to make the playoffs. That's a bad thing. And losing to the Raiders like that, that's like the perfect kind of um, cherry on the sundae for you, if you will, for this 2014 49er season. I got to go to the Chicago Bears, another primetime featured game, and here's another game where they basically got dominated. Don't let that final score fool you. It wasn't that close. The Bears were getting boat raced by the Dallas Cowboys. It was just bad. This team has quit. This team is not good. It is another organization in need of significant changes from top to bottom in the offseason. I mean, you're playing the Cowboys, you're at home, and that's the effort you put forth. That's the result that you're able to put there on the field. That is just completely terrible. And of course, now the Bears, a team that foolishly so many idiots thought was going to be a real playoff contender this year, has now assured themselves that they will finish absolutely no better than 8-8, and they are now officially mathematically eliminated from the playoff picture in the NFC. Way to go, Bears! But two other real losers this week. I got to go with Mike Pettine, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. I've referenced before this Week 14 matchup against the Colts that it had come, the time had finally arrived to start Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel, because you had gotten to a point where Hoyer was so mediocre, frankly, that Manziel couldn't really have been any worse. And if that you reach that point, you get to that case, then you have to hope that with Manziel's potentially superior upside, that he would give you some life and he would bring a different dimension to your offense. And I think when you look at the Browns and their 2014 season, the stubbornness by Mike Pettine to stick with Brian Hoyer longer than maybe he should have because he was more concerned about being right as opposed to getting it right could be very costly for this organization. And could leave a lot of fans scratching their heads and wondering what could have been. It's not a Super Bowl team, but you'd like to maybe make the playoffs because who knows in this case. You're the Browns. It's been so long and so infrequent since you came back to the league in '99 that you've been to the playoffs. You get there, maybe you can win a playoff game and you give yourself some really good momentum heading into the next season. But for some reason, their coach decided that he wanted to stick with Hoyer. And they paid the price on Sunday. They truly did. I mean, because they got almost nothing out of that offense. It was just bad. And speaking of losers, Jay Gruden of the Washington Redskins, for some inexplicable reason, this fuck has completely and totally given up and thrown the towel in on RG3. And somehow foolishly believes that Colt McCoy is his team's best chance to win football games. Now, you were sitting there getting boat raced by the Rams on Sunday. You were down 24-0. You've got the fans chanting for RG3. That's how bad this shit is getting. And you wait until late in the game when McCoy gets injured before you finally bring RG3 in. Rare is it that I'm an advocate of a coach being one and done, but if there is a situation or a circumstance where I could definitely advocate that at this point in time, it has to be Jay Gruden with the Washington Redskins. What a bum, what an idiot, what a moron, what a loser. Now let's move on to some of the top stars from the week that was in week number 14. We go to the quarterback position. I guess you have to go with Aaron Rodgers. I know the media sure loves to, for sure. But I mean, Monday night, big time stage, another big time Aaron Rodgers performance. In terms of running backs, you got to look at Le'Veon Bell. 3 straight games with over 200 yards from scrimmage. The only other player to do that in NFL history is Sweetness, Walter Payton. And then you look at DeMarco Murray, too, almost 180 yards rushing against the Bears. I mean, DeMarco Murray is still, to me, a legit MVP candidate. Well, you've got one segment that sits there and pushes strongly for Aaron Rodgers and another segment that pushes even maybe stronger for J.J. Watt. I think when you look at total value to team, I firmly believe you have to put DeMarco Murray right in that conversation because he has been the X factor, the difference maker as to why the Dallas Cowboys have started off this 2014 season with a 9-4 record. Looking at wide receivers, you look at the top 2 wide receivers taken in the 2011 draft, both having over 200 receiving yards this week, and Julio Jones and A.J. Green. I mean, this is the type of performance that you expect to see out of these guys. These are the type of performances that you see elite wide receivers have. And Julio Jones and A.J. Green were incredibly impressive this week. On the defensive side of the ball, you got to look at Elvis Dumervil, setting a single-season Ravens sack record with 3.5 sacks in that game against the Dolphins. I mean, impressive stuff. And then, of course, J.J. Watt believe he had 3 sacks of his own, and he was just being J.J. Watt and doing J.J. Watt things. But I think the biggest star on defense has to be the Rams defense. You could say what you want about this team and who they've played. The fact of the matter is, to have 2 straight shutouts is damn impressive. This is a defense that is kind of frustrating, and a team that is kind of frustrating because you say to yourself, what if these guys would have showed up a little earlier in the year? How good could this Rams team be? Well, you're starting to find out how good this Rams defense could be. 2 straight shutouts. I mean, they have been in quarterbacks' faces. They're forcing turnovers. They're getting stops when they need them. That Ram defense is something else. They are playing incredibly well at a very high level right now at this moment in time for head coach Jeff Fisher. So there you have it, some of my top stories, winners and losers, and top stars from Week 14 of the 2014 NFL season. Feel free to chime in with your thoughts on the week that was. We've only got a couple of weeks left before we get to the playoffs. Yay!